Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Seeds and Weeds podcast, brought to you by Small House Farm. Join us as we talk with gardeners, foragers, herbalists, chefs, and community activists to explore the many ways that plants impact our cultures and cuisines, our history, and our future. I'm your host, Bevan Cohen, and this is Seeds and Weeds. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Guess what? We got another great episode for you today. We're going to be hanging out with author and garlic farmer Kristin Graves. Now, Kristin's going to be telling us basically everything that we need to know to grow our best garlic ever. And we're going to be digging into her amazing new book, The Garlic Companion. So if you enjoy garlic in the kitchen, in the garden, or even for like arts and crafts, you're going to love this interview. Kristin is super awesome. Things here at Small House have been pretty mellow lately. I mean, at least as mellow as things can get, right? Yesterday, I was the guest presenter for the Seed Savers Exchange virtual seed school. I was asked to speak about the benefits and challenges of growing seeds here in the Midwest. It was a pretty fun opportunity to, meet some new seed savers, talk about some of the work that we're doing here. And it's been a minute since I've had a chance to collaborate with the folks over at the Seed Savers Exchange. If you're not familiar with Seed Savers Exchange, you definitely should be. They're doing some amazing work. Here is the mission statement from their website. Seed Savers Exchange stewards America's culturally diverse and endangered garden and food crop legacy for present and future generations. We educate and connect people through collecting, regenerating, and sharing heirloom seeds, plants, and stories. If you'd like to learn more about the Seed Savers Exchange, I'm going to put a link to their website down in the show notes so you can go ahead and check it out. Now, before we jump into the interview, I do want to say a quick thank you, of course, to all the folks in our Patreon community. Members of our Patreon community directly support the Seeds and Weeds podcast, and we are so grateful for that. If you'd like more info on how you can support the program, you can find that link also down in the show notes. I've talked to a few people at events recently, and they have mentioned to me how much they enjoy listening to the show, and I gotta say that's pretty awesome to hear for sure. Putting together a podcast is it's a heck of a lot of work, so it's really nice to get that sort of feedback from people. If you're listening to the show right now and you enjoy what we're doing here, please let us know. Something as simple as leaving some stars or a review. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or any of those apps, that'd be super cool. And thanks to all of you that have left us a review or a rating. That sort of thing helps get the podcast out to more people, and we really appreciate that. Kristin Graves is a fifth-generation farmer in Alberta, Canada. In addition to her vegetable CSA, she focuses on growing fresh garlic for local markets and creating value-added products to ship across Canada. Today, Kristin's joining us on the show to talk about her new book, The Garlic Companion. Kristin, welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really looking forward to talking about your new book, The Garlic Companion. But before we dig into that, could you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and the work that you do on your farm?
Absolutely. This is my favorite subject. So my name's Kristin. I'm a garlic grower up in Alberta, Canada. I grow in a zone 3, sometimes zone 2B climate. So it can be challenging at times, but this is also a big generational farm. I'm the 5th generation on our land, and we grow grain, alfalfa, garlic, of course. I also run a small market garden. And so that's kind of our farm in a nutshell. My business started with a vegetable CSA subscription program. And then over the last 8 seasons has kind of evolved into this big scale garlic business. So I grow garlic during the summer. I make garlic products during the winter. And now I've just written my first book that's all about garlic.
I love it. Can you tell us some more about the garlic products that you guys are making?
Oh, for sure. Where that all kind of started was because Alberta has such a short growing season. We often find ourselves lacking for fresh garlic options, especially as you get closer to the end of winter or during the spring months. And, our crop just really hasn't grown yet. There tends to be a big gap there. And so part of why I started processing our garlic was in hopes of providing a locally grown option for those months, something that still has a ton of flavor, that people know where it was growing, how it was growing, and so on. And the other part of that is because I wanted to turn my business, which was very seasonal at the time, into something that was year round. And so by making these value-added products, I was able to extend our harvest. I sell them at markets during the winter, summers, all year now. So that's kind of where the idea for these products started. And it originally started with a smoked garlic bulb, which was just a whole bulb that we smoked. And then with the pandemic, things also changed there because we still had a very perishable product. So then I started looking at dehydrating the garlic. From there, we made garlic dip mixes and unique salt blends. And then I started foraging for my own ingredients on the farm. And so that evolved into different products such as a poultry seasoning that uses high bush cranberries. So now I believe we have, 25 different products. Most of them are seasonal, of course. It might even be more than that now, but it's a great way of, like I said, extending the harvest and then just turning the business into something so much more sustainable.
I'm a big garlic guy too. I mean, I love eating garlic, of course, but I also love growing garlic for many different reasons, of course. And you kind of cover all of the different reasons folks should grow garlic in your book, for sure. One of my favorite things, though, I think, is that it's a crop that we're going to plant in the fall, like some of our grains. So even after the main garden season is all done, there's still some planting to do. And I kind of love that.
I do too. I like to say that our season now ends with the new beginning. I grew up on a grain farm here. So typically we harvest in the fall, but we don't plant our grain until the spring. So like our harvest would really be the end of our season. So with this garlic now, it starts with a new beginning. And I don't know, it kind of comes full circle. And it's really nice to think of it that way.
Now, just for our listeners, would you mind walking us kind of through the year of garlic growing? I guess, the seasons of garlic, if you will.
Of course. Yeah. So keep in mind, this is, I'm talking to a northern climate. So it does change a little bit depending on your more southern zones. But for us, we plant garlic in October. So we actually just finished planting our garlic crop this weekend because we had some cold weather coming up. So we planted at the end of our season. It's got just enough time to set roots before winter really sets in, and then it goes totally dormant. We grow hardneck garlic here, which is the type of garlic that does require a cold dormant period in order to properly develop cloves the next year. It's a process called fertilization. And so for us, that dormant period really does extend about 6 months, which is great because, we plant the garlic and then walk away and I get to enjoy my winter. But then in the spring, garlic is always the first thing that pops up. And that's one of the reasons why I love growing it, is because we're bustling and trying to get everything else in the garden planted. And springtime can be very chaotic, and garlic's already doing its thing. It's very low maintenance. We usually see our shoots at, the end of April, beginning of May, somewhere in there when, once the temperatures start to rise. And then for the rest of the, spring, summer, like I said, it's very low maintenance. So we do regular watering. Weeding is always my top priority in the spring because I have learned the hard way that small weeds are always easier to pull than big, tall ones. And then after that, we move into garlic scape season, which is around July. Garlic scapes are the flowering stalk of a hardneck garlic plant. And so for us, we clip them off so that the energy all goes back into the bulb. And it just ends up being this wonderful, delicious bonus crop for us. And then after garlic scapes, about a month later is when we harvest garlic. So usually it's August, middle of August, then we harvest our bulbs, and then they have to dry for about a month. So we don't really get to enjoy the full crop until about September. And then really we're right back where we started, where we start cracking and processing the bulbs in order to put them back into the ground.
Well, while we're on the subject of growing garlic, could you maybe give me some tips, or all of us, but I'm selfishly asking for me. Do you have any tips for growing like a really healthy, productive harvest? What's going to really get me a good haul of garlic next year?
So I actually have 3 top tips for planting garlic. First and foremost, you want to pay really close attention to the type of garlic that you're planting. So what I mean by that is if you're in a colder zone, you really want to look for a hardneck variety. If you're in a warmer zone, like zone 6 and above, you want to look for a soft neck garlic. Sometimes I find that that's really half the battle right there. It's not impossible to grow either in both zones, but it just makes it a lot harder if you're trying to grow something that wants a Mediterranean climate, but you live in Alberta, or vice versa. So that's my first tip. My second tip is to, if possible, source your seed bulbs as close to home as possible. So if you know a local grower, a local farm, maybe it's your own crop, just make sure that they're healthy, uniform bulbs that don't have any bruising on them or anything like that. And if you can source them locally, then it means it's already acclimated to your zone. Again, you're just giving yourself better chance for success. Now, the third tip is crop rotation. So this one is key. If you want a healthy garlic crop that's free of disease, free of pests, you want to make sure that you rotate your garlic crop every year, and then don't plant in that same spot for at least 3 years. And this does include other alliums like onions or leeks. So those are my top 3 tips for you.
I totally dig it. Thank you for that. Could you tell us a little bit more? You mentioned the hard neck and soft neck garlic. Could you kind of help us understand the difference between those two a little bit more?
Absolutely. So there's actually hundreds of different varieties of garlic. It's a big rabbit hole that I can really dive into here. But all of those varieties can be separated into 2 main groups of garlic, 2 main types of garlic. The hardneck garlic, like I said, it's meant for cold zones. It's very hardy, and it is very characteristic by its stiff stem. So the hard neck, this is the type of garlic that produces a garlic scape and does require that really cold dormant period. So it tends to have a more robust flavor, although I would argue that any homegrown garlic tastes better than a store-bought variety. And then it has a good shelf life, but not as much as what a soft neck. So for a hard neck, your average storage would be about 6 months. Of course, if you are really diligent, you might get it up to 8 months there. Now, if we switch over to the soft neck garlic, again, it's named very aptly because it does have a soft, pliable stem. This is your typical or traditional garlic for making garlic braids because they're very pliable. They tend to have a slightly less intense flavor, but like I said, I think even the soft necks, if they're homegrown, they still pack a punch. But they have really great storage capabilities. So it's not uncommon to have soft neck garlic store up to a year. And these would really be better suited for your warm climates. It's what's growing a lot in California or the Mediterranean, somewhere like that, those really warm zones. So those are kind of the 2 main differences between them. The other thing I will mention is that the actual makeup of the bulb does look quite different. So a hard neck garlic usually has fewer but bigger cloves of garlic, whereas a soft neck garlic is kind of formed like they're smaller cloves and they're formed together like an artichoke almost. So they can be layered sometimes too.
Okay, cool. Well, let's dig into this book here, The Garlic Companion. It's got everything that we need to know about garlic, right? It's got growing, harvesting, storing garlic. There's plenty of delicious recipes. There's medicinal uses, folklore. And I'm going to try to touch on all of these or a few of these at least today, depending on how much time we have. But what I want to get into first, there's an entire chapter about garlic arts and crafts. And that was something that I did not expect when I started reading this book. And they're not just a couple of projects. There's quite a few arts and crafts projects in there. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a bit of a nod to the way my business kind of started or not necessarily started, but how it's kind of evolved is that I'm really committed to trying to promote women in the field and women in agriculture. And so I try to add these soft feminine touches to all of, what I'm doing, my logo, my brand, all of that. So my friend is a photographer and I made this big, beautiful garlic crown and we did a photo shoot with it. And then, it just kind of went from there. So from the garlic crown came a garlic wreath and then the garlic braids. And then once garlic had completely taken over my life here, that was when I started planning like a garlic themed farm to table dinner. So that's where the tablescapes come into play and the table runners and the bouquets using garlic scapes and all of that. And it just kind of all fits in really beautifully. And it shows too that garlic, yes, it is a vegetable and it's delicious and it's wonderful to eat, but it also can be really beautiful and making your own decorations and they're natural and all of that it just fits in really beautifully.
I thought it was super fun. I really loved you did one where it's using garlic scapes in a flower arrangement and oh my gosh, garlic scapes are just so cool with all the little shapes and twists and stuff that they do. It was beautiful. It was such a cool idea. I loved it so much.
Thank you.
Now, once we harvest our garlic, let's go through this. You kind of helped us plant the garlic. Once we harvest the garlic, we need to kind of hang it and dry it for a while. And you have got the garlic wall, which is pretty awesome. Could you tell us a little bit about your garlic wall, but also maybe some advice on ways that we can dry down our garlic, those of us that don't happen to have a garlic wall?
For sure. So when I first started growing garlic, my setup was super basic. I had like 100 bulbs, and honestly, I just had newspaper laid out on a table in the basement, and I would, every day just kind of roll them over, make sure there was air flowing. So the one thing I'll say is that your drying system doesn't have to be complex or elaborate. It's whatever you have on hand. I've dried garlic in bundles hanging off of a ladder, which, is great space saver if you have it somewhere in the corner of your house or you don't really have a lot of room. I've used old closet organizers or even just chicken wire over top of a table. It can be very basic. The main thing is to just make sure that you have a lot of airflow. So when I started growing my garlic, like I said, I started small, but it quickly got out of control. And I went from 100 bulbs to 1,000 bulbs. And then within the span of 2 years, we were up to 75,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's why I needed a bigger drying system. My little ladders and everything like that, they just didn't cut it anymore. So what we did is we actually strung up cables between the studs on our machine shed because we're a big farm here. We actually do have this building already. And there's a lean-to on one side. So it ends up being a wind tunnel, and it's perfect for drying garlic. So we strung up these wires between the studs. It allows airflow to hit both sides of the bulbs, front and back. And then we bundle our garlic and hang it on top of it. So it ends up being about, I think it's 100 feet long and 20 feet high. And the whole thing is just solid garlic. It's pretty fragrant. And it's my favorite part of growing. I love just being able to visually see my crop hanging there, all this hard work, the whole season just summed up into one.
Yeah. There's some photos of it in the book. And I mean, it's absolutely stunning. It's such a cool thing.
Thank you. Yeah. Who knew garlic could be so aesthetically pleasing?
You wouldn't guess that, but you know what? It's the whole book, to be honest with you, is beautiful. The photography is gorgeous. You've really showcased garlic as like a work of art.
Thank you. That's such a compliment.
In the Garlic Companion, you have a lot of awesome recipes in there, but this I'm going to put you on the spot. What is one of your favorite ways to use garlic in the kitchen?
Oh, that is on the spot because I feel like I have garlic for every occasion and it's hard to pick just one. Definitely out of the book, one of my most favorite recipes is the honey garlic ribs, which my mom, she actually used to make those for me. It was my favorite recipe growing up as a kid. And so she would make them for me on my birthday. And I'm 35 now, and she still makes me ribs on my birthday every year. And so that one definitely is my favorite. It uses fresh garlic, but a close runner-up would be the black garlic cheesecake.
Yeah, all right. Tell us more about black garlic. What's that all about?
So black garlic is a cooked garlic. It starts off just fresh garlic, just like any regular bulb, but it's a cooking process that slowly caramelizes the sugars, which then turns the cloves that dark, inky color, and then it makes it more sweet. It's more of like a molasses or a balsamic. It's got a big umami punch to it. So the cool thing about black garlic is that it can go sweet or savory. I work with a restaurant locally here that we do a garlic dinner every so often, and there's always garlic or black garlic in the dessert. So we've done creme brulee, we did chocolate cake. We've even gone so far as to make a simple syrup, which is a recipe in the book, by the way, and add it to an espresso martini. So it's really cool. There's a lot of different uses that you can use black garlic for that you wouldn't traditionally think to pair with garlic.
I've never in my life, until I read your book, even thought of or heard of somebody using garlic in a sweet application like that before.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody would agree with me, but I'm telling you, it's meant to be that way.
Okay, Kristin, here we go. Tell us about the garlic goddess.
Oh, yeah. So this one, like I said, with the garlic craft section, this one kind of started as a way of, putting a feminine touch to my business. It started off mostly as a name for a dip mix, if I'm being honest. I made a dill and onion and garlic dip mix, which the garlic goddess just kind of seemed to roll with it. And at markets, people started coming up to me and calling me that. And they're like, oh, you're the garlic goddess. And I kind of thought, well, I mean, yes, I am. Of course I am. And so eventually from there, we started doing these photo shoots, and it always involves garlic, of course, and then a big elaborate dress of some kind. And the most memorable ones are me in this gold sequin dress on a ladder in front of our garlic wall. And so it doesn't really matter. I mean, it changes all the time. We do this quite a bit now, but the message is still the same, is that, it's trying to show that you can be a farmer. You can do tough things and work hard in the field and be covered in dirt most of the time, but you can also be beautiful and feminine and have these soft touches of grace within you. And it's just, it's become this visual representation of that. And the name, the Garlic Goddess, is just kind of stuck and become synonymous with that, which I'm okay with. It just is a nice way of, more than anything, sparking the conversation as to why I'm so proud of what I do. And our farm here, I'm the 5th generation on our farm, but I'm the first woman in our family to be taking on such a prominent role and to be the future going ahead. So I think that's important, and that should be celebrated.
I absolutely agree with that. You should absolutely be so proud of yourself. I love that so much. Kristin, what are the links that people are going to need so they can connect with you, learn more about your farm, and get their copy of the Garlic Companion?
So Instagram is really my main platform, I would say. So if you are interested in learning more about our farm and what I do, or seeing these big dress photos or what have you, my Instagram is 5th Gen Gardens. The Garlic Companion, it's available now wherever books are sold. It's on lots of independent bookshops, local shops, Amazon. It's a lot more accessible than I ever thought it was going to be. So it's amazing. I'm still very humbled by that.
That's awesome, Kristin. Thank you again so much for being on the show with us today. This was just a blast.
Thank you so much for having me. I can talk garlic all day long.
It's that time again, the end of the show. Thanks again to Kristin Graves for being our guest today, and to all of you for tuning in. Remember, if you enjoyed the podcast, you can always show your support by joining our community on Patreon. You can find that link and so much more at seedsandweedspodcast.com. This show is edited and produced by all of us here at Small House Farm, and the music we're enjoying right now is Good Morning Jazz Cafe by Sleep Volume. Thanks again for being here, friends. I'm Bevan Cohen, and we'll see you next time.